Good morning everyone and welcome to our Demystifying Managed Services, the Future of IT webinar. Our aim for this morning is to talk you through what a managed service really entails, as well as the options available and how to decide which is right for you. My name is Daniel Bruce and I work in the marketing team at GCI, and your host this morning are our Sales Director Anthony Green. Good morning Anthony.
Good morning everyone.
And our Senior Solutions Architect Kelvin Papp. Good morning Kelvin.
Morning everyone.
If you experience any technical issues or wish to ask a question for the Q&A, you can submit them using the chat icon in the bottom left-hand corner. After the webinar, we'll also be sending you a recording accompanied by the presentation slides used. I'll now pass you on to Anthony. We do hope you enjoy this webinar. Over to you, Anthony.
Good morning everyone. Okay, so just to start off with a little bit of information about GCI. So we are £100 million turnover business with around 500 staff. I'm the sales director for Blue Chip, which is one of the businesses within GCI that predominantly provides IT managed services. We were added to the group in July this year as a capability add-on for the GCI business to really add a lot of capability around IT service delivery and IT projects. From a customer perspective, we have a range of customers varying from SME businesses across to larger enterprises around a number of sectors, as you'll see in this slide. From a Blue Chip perspective, a few examples there. So Merlin Entertainments is a very key customer of ours, for example, where we've worked with them for over 12 years in helping with delivering IT transformational projects, but also in delivering their business as usual support operations, right from first line through to sort of the higher end, more heavy infrastructure aspects. Okay, so the agenda for today. So we're going to start with an overview really to explain the piece of what managed services are, to provide a definition of that, to explain why we feel you should consider managed services, and the piece around does it have to be all or nothing, really just to talk through the fact that actually you don't have to go for managed services in full. You don't have to outsource all of your IT operations. You can consider it on a basis of what's right for you and take certain aspects out. But we'll also cover the I want it all. So for customers that do want to take all of their services out, what are some of the things you should look for and what are the things you should consider? I'll then hand into Kelvin on how can GCI help me, really taking it as someone who previously run an IT operation for a customer, someone who can give us a really good view on how we operate with an IT team and really how do internal teams operate and how can an MSP assist that team either in part or in full, and really give that perspective of how we could step in to support that function. And then just a little piece on our service offerings at the end, just to touch through the sort of three core aspects which are aligned to those customers with those different levels of need, whether it be something on a flexible type basis to support internal IT operations, more tactical sort of services to take specific aspects, or for those customers that require a full managed service to take everything out. So what are managed services? So this is a quote from the MSP Alliance to explain what is a managed service provider and what are managed services. So the proactive management of an IT asset or object by a third party. So that's an independent assessment of it, and certainly in the Gauge as an MSP, we manage and maintain a whole range of assets, both on-premise and in the cloud, which is the common kind of role of an MSP. Okay, so why consider managed services? So we've put this into 6 different sections to try and break down and explain the why we feel that you should consider managed services and what those headings are. And generally what we find is every customer is very different in that it'll often be one or two of these specific sections which are driving the customer to consider managed services. So I'll move on to these and drop into each of these one by one and explain what they mean. So cost reduction. Now, whilst moving to a managed service doesn't necessarily mean a reduction in cost, but it can often do that because you are effectively leveraging a managed service provider's economy of scale. So, significant teams that an MSP will have, and you can tap into those resources on a basis of what you require. And you can move to a place where you have a fixed cost and it's a predictable situation in terms of what your business as usual support is. And the economies of scale things, sort of a few examples of that can often be that, for example, for out of hours, that if you want to run 24/7, for example, you may have to employ 3 people for each role that you have within the IT function, but you may only have the odd 1 or 2 phone calls at night. So by leveraging a larger team that services multiple customers, that can be an immediate cost reduction. Again, things such as holiday and sickness, again, in a wider team, you've got more ability to have cover across a wider team rather than having to have lots of internal contingency plans and multiple members of staff that can do a specific role. Also, from a management point of view, it costs a lot to put the right service management structure in, both from a tools perspective and a management team perspective. Again, if you can slot into a managed services operation that has those structural overheads and you can share those costs with other customers, that can reduce your cost. Touching on the contractor and recruitment costs, again, there is a shortage in our industry, as most people are probably aware, of the right skills and right talent. And again, as an IT services business, we are constantly bringing on technicians at all different levels, training them up, taking them up through the ranks, and certainly, we find it hard, but certainly for a customer who has a limited team, it's very, very hard to attract and retain that talent and give that talent a journey throughout their life cycle of their career, which of course means that you tend to get quite a bit of churn, and then that ends up resulting in a lot of recruitment costs. So in staff productivity, it's very true in pretty much all modern businesses now that IT it drives people's businesses. It's used for the running of that business, and therefore that if IT is inefficient and ineffective, if there is downtime, if there is users that are chasing around to try and secure a fix for a problem that they might have, very quickly you're impacting that user and that user's productivity. And that, of course, then means they're then effective at their job role that they complete. And productivity, obviously, a very, very important thing for a business in terms of its ability to be successful and its ability to be profitable. I think also the move to 24/7 really, really does introduce the fact that, again, users want to, in the modern age, be productive whenever they want to work, flexible working, home working, all these kind of pieces. So again, that ability to be able to make those users effective, provide that support, increase their productivity is really, really important in the modern age. So from a skill set perspective, again, we see lots of customers that, due to the shortage of available talent in the marketplace, due to the fact that actually IT infrastructure has become much more diverse, the technology sets have become much more diverse. A lot of people now are running multiple platforms, public cloud, private cloud, on-premise. So actually, very, very hard to have the specialist skills to support all the different aspects that you have within the technologies that you have within your IT function. And certainly, a key consideration with managed services is that if you access a much bigger pool of skill sets, so for example, within the GCI group, we have over 200 technical staff, over 150 within the blue chip business alone, having fractional access to, let's call it a network expert when a network problem appears, or a VMware expert when a VMware problem appears, when you need it, is very, very key, and very, very key for quick resolution, and very, very key for sort of an efficient, cost-efficient way of dealing with those diverse technologies. It's also fair to say that our knowledge builds as an organization every day through the excessive exposure that we get through all of our various clients, both from a IT strategy and also from a business as usual IT support function. we have so much exposure, and we can actually share that with various clients. And again, that very, very common that you get a support problem, and it will be something in the teams that we would have seen many, many times before, and we can resolve it quickly and efficiently. I think also there's in terms of IT projects, again, that internally there's so many different diverse projects that need to be done now that, again, having access to a wider team where actually you can draft in an expert to deploy a particular piece of technology because he has done it 100 times is very, very efficient. And again, you get a best practice installation right from the start. So in terms of increased support, I touched on the 24/7 aspect earlier, and I think it's fair to say that we're now in an age where 24/7 is almost the new norm. And if you look at the sort of the millennials, as they call it, or the younger workers, it's almost now an expectation that they are going to want to work when they want to work, and work flexibly, and work potentially weekends, evenings, but drop the kids off to school in the morning. All that kind of thing is now becoming the norm. And it is very true that to run a 24/7 rota, the standard 9 to 5 is only 7 hours of that 24 hours. So you can see how you actually need to employ 3 people for each role. So 24/7 is a very, very big thing, and is something that we're finding a lot of customers are bringing more and more frontline and infrastructure managed services to us based on that driver that actually having an IT operation that is 9 to 5 is no longer fit for purpose. So I think what comes in all of that is providing that level of service is what the modern age, or let's call it digital transformation, companies moving to flexible remote work, that's sort of attracting and empowering the best people to be able to work on their terms, and the IT service really needs to slot in and deliver at that standard. We touch on automation here, and we invest heavily in automation, again, on the basis that the more and more we can automate some of the back-end mundane tasks, the more time that our support technicians can actually spend helping users and adding value and actually carrying out proactive support and management tasks of people's infrastructure. And then that drives down the incidents and problems that you may occur on a day-to-day basis. I think also something else around increased support is that if you have a large IT services business, so IT service delivery is our business, it's our entire incentive when we get up in the morning is to drive a successful service delivery business, a successful, profitable business that has that commercial focus, if you like, to constantly improve the way it delivers service, to drive efficiency so that we can provide the best service for the best price and be the most competitive in our marketplace, and really bringing that commercial agenda in, which unfortunately can be lacking in an internal department that then doesn't drive those efficiencies and those service improvements. Not all cases, of course, but something we see. So this next one is the one personally that very much excites me. It is driving focus to the core business activity, and I often articulate it to people that I feel like we're back to where my IT career started, where people started to deploy file servers and started to deploy email to replace the fax machine and replace the post. And it made businesses more efficient because they could communicate more quickly, and they could do more business, and they could do more with less and make more money. And I think that the digital age, and when I say the digital age, I mean the world of the smartphone and the smart app and the website, I think is driving IT and CIOs back into that conversation of, okay, how do we get business to, IT to drive business value and to help us sell more or help us save money? And certainly, lots of the conversations I'm now having are around that, because once upon a time, people always turn to managed service or outsourcing purely to save cost, pure IT costs. I think now the agenda is back round the other way. It's how can we take business as usual operations outside of our four walls, get them dealt with by an MSP, so that inside our four walls we can focus on things that drive business value. We have a customer case study, Lush Cosmetics, really good example, whereby they wanted to release a team of very key people to develop a new smartphone app to sell their products, which they are forecasting will be bigger than all 120 stores that they have, physical stores that they have today. So a big business driver for them, freeing those key people to drive that project forward and allow us to ensure that we're keeping the lights on for them. We're managing, maintaining their server infrastructure and making sure that the business as usual operation is in good shape. So it's a really, really good example, taking the business as usual distraction away, focusing on the value add, focusing on delivering applications and web technology that helps the business be more profitable, more successful. And I guess, to coin a phrase, very much the digital transformation and where GCI see the overall IT managed service marketplace going, whether you're looking at telephony platforms or IT platforms or any of those things, the move towards digital that helps enable your business be more successful. Okay, so a sad truth of why we're often having a managed service conversation is a failing service delivery. And I'm sure most of us have been in this point at some point or other, and it's not to say that there aren't fantastic IT internal functions out there. We work with lots of them, but unfortunately sometimes you do end up with a situation where the service starts to fail, and maybe that is because some key members of the team have moved on or left, or that some members of the team have if you like, have over time become inefficient or disenfranchised maybe, and that actually what that then means is that actually we do have a poor response time or an acceptance that maybe a ticket doesn't get resolved, for example, or an acceptance that there's an outage, or an acceptance that we don't have good security, and that we just do what we have to do. And sometimes that results in a whole load of noise, and certainly a number of our enterprises who talk to us about managed services, that's their phrase, is they want to remove the noise that comes out of the back of IT service operations, because IT service operations is a really, really tough world of thousands of tickets and incidents and problems and people at the end of the phone to look after. So it's not an easy thing to do, and certainly it's all too easy to fall into that trap of, well, that service starts to fail. And I think some areas like, for example, patching is a good example where we see that maybe that always goes to the back of the queue, but in today's security landscape and the amount of risks that are out there, we feel that certainly it's not good enough to not be managing your patching as a simplistic example of somewhere where we see some failing in service delivery. So again, as I said, these different sections, different people will resonate to different sections other than others, but certainly the last two are ones that we see on a very regular basis. So does it have to be all or nothing? Absolutely doesn't have to be. In terms of a lot of people see managed service providers as a threat to internal IT, as trying to come in and take over. Certainly not the case with many MSPs, not with us and many other ones that I know that customers work with, who want to work in partnership with their customers and help them work out what's right for them. Because if you can find a partner to evolve with and grow with, I always think it's very much an evolution, not revolution in this scenario, where you say, okay, what are the best aspects that we could take to an MSP? What are the disciplines that are really good for outsourcing? So talk about 24/7. First line service desk could be a really good discipline for outsourcing if you don't have enough volume to justify having your own team working around the clock. So an MSP could take your first line, but actually you could then pick up, for example, the infrastructure management in a normal working day. So look at it pragmatically would always be my advice, and where can we reduce cost or increase service, or help the business focus on core business value aspects in terms of taking some of the IT operations out, but not all of them. I think it's becoming very, very much the case, this sort of halfway house, particularly with software as a service really taking off. So as a good example, Office 365 is everywhere, and those who don't have it will have it, I'm sure. It's reducing people's IT estates, which can mean that certain roles are now hard to sustain, where the economies of scale have reduced on people's infrastructure. Again, people's SANs are getting smaller for when people move their email and their file stores out. So again, it can be a good way to consider a partial managed service scenario where you say, actually, I'd really like to repoint the guy that used to do this particular role. Half of it's now not there because we've gone to software as a service, and the other half we can put it in the hands of an MSP. So yeah, consider it as an evolution, not revolution in this scenario, and take things out in pieces and find a partner that wants to work with you, that you want to work with, and over a period of time, let that IT service delivery evolve. Customers I've worked with have gone through stages of moving aspects out, moving aspects back in. That's fairly normal in some scenarios. So, because people, customers change, their scale changes, and so on. But you want someone you can work with on an ongoing basis. The polar opposite aspect of that, if you do want it all, and certainly sometimes we speak to customers that are very much want to take business as usual operations away from in-house. Again, maybe specifically those that are very focused on the digital agenda, because I think certainly I would always recommend anything that involves line of business applications or anything that it involves bespoke projects and bespoke software delivery within the business. That IP absolutely has to be built in-house. And then, of course, where customers often will say is, okay, well, what I actually want to do then is I want to take the entire business as usual service, right from the first line service desk response call, right through to management of my security and management of my infrastructure, and I would like a partner to manage that and look after it for me. So I think certainly in that scenario, you're putting an awful lot of trust in your MSP, whether that's us or someone else. So I would always say, do your due diligence on the company, on the financial security of the company, on the resources that company has. Very much kick the tires, examine what you're buying, and make sure that you really understand clearly what is in and out of scope of what it is you're buying. Certainly where we see customers with failed contracts with other partners, it's often because there is a lack of clarity on the service that they've bought and the expectations. So standard disciplines in our industry that are best of practice are things like service catalogue, service definitions, documents that very, very clearly explain what you do and what you don't get, more importantly, and make sure you understand that. Also, challenging for IT departments are now becoming sort of contract managers as well, because obviously more third parties means contract management, and make sure you have the right contract. Make sure that if it is a new relationship, you're not tying yourself into something that's difficult to get out of if for some reason it doesn't meet your expectations or doesn't fit your needs longer term. So certainly have a look at that. And I'd like to pass over to Kelvin.
Cool, thank you. So I guess having understood a little bit about what managed services are, what they mean, what kind of value they can bring to your organization, just want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the offerings and the options that GCI can kind of employ within your organizations to kind of help you take this notion of managed services forward within your businesses. I guess as we've kind of alluded to, there are multiple different ways and means that you can adopt managed services, and I think the challenge for a lot of businesses coming to the kind of table of managed services is that actually there is no yardstick that says this is what a managed service looks like and this is what I'm going to go out and buy from vendor A, B and C. And really this next couple of slides are about how we've interpreted the kind of conversations that we've had with customers over the years into some kind of logical offerings that make sense, I think, within your organizations and can hopefully help you to get on that journey towards either a more or less adoption of managed services within your businesses. So what are the approaches that we take? I think the first of these hopefully is one which is fairly familiar to most of you, and that actually this idea of managed service doesn't have to be a wholesale outsource either on an application or specific service bases or a wholesale outsourcing of your infrastructure. It's about getting the most out of your in-house team by saying, well, look, I like what my team do, but I sense that they need some help in certain areas. And actually the starting point for a lot of our relationships with customers from a managed service perspective is that we are providing this kind of extension-based support, this kind of safety net approach to managed services, where we're not taking over. We're not coming in and delivering maybe prescribed or contractually agreed sets of services or tasks. What we're doing is saying, right, we're here to help you, and we can add value to your organisation by giving you access to things like 24/7 support, by extending your in-house capabilities through the deployment of monitoring tool sets that give you increased visibility over what's going on in your environment. And for us, we can be as hands-off or as hands-on as you want us to be in that kind of model, because it's a consumption-based kind of pay-as-you-go model where we're saying, look, pick up the phone when you need us. It could be that you've got known gaps that 2, 3, 4 times a year you run into a challenge that you're going to need some support with, and we can fill that gap. Or it could be that actually that 99% of the time everything's fine, but there'll be that 1 week of the year or 1 day of the year where your 3 key people are off and you have a disaster with your exchange deployment or similar, and you need to know that you can pick up the phone and take advantage of that kind of wider expertise and wider knowledge that sits within our team. So for us, a very easy journey or easy start to that journey into managed services is to look at this idea of using an MSP like GCI to say, we know we've got these challenges in an organisation. Let's look to an MSP to kind of plug some of those gaps and take advantage of some of those, those increased skill sets and increased capabilities that exist out there in the wild. Key point to note with this kind of model is that it's a non-ownership model. So from our point of view as your service provider, we're there as a point of escalation, a point where you'll engage with us, but there's no onus on us to own or manage any aspects of your IT. It's purely an escalation-based model. Now, it often sets the foundation for organisations to say, right, we know we've got this skill set in MSP. We can lean on GCI or Blue Chip to deliver certain technical capabilities around areas that we know we're weak on. Actually, let's take that a step further and say, well, we know you can manage our network because you've got that wider network capability, or we know that you're 24/7, so you can maybe help us out with our patching. And it gives rise to this idea of what we refer to often as kind of tactical managed services or functional outsourcing. And this is a really kind of popular area for our business at the minute, where we've got organisations that know and understand our capability, like the way we operate, but actually want to offload some of those more run rate tasks or areas of their business that they're struggling with. And some good examples of that are things like maybe first line support, where you just want an external point of contact for dealing with those initial tickets being raised, that initial influx of calls when things go wrong, and potentially adding some value through improving maybe things like first time fix responses. Could be more technical areas, things like software patching, as Ant mentioned earlier. And I guess from kind of personal experience, as Anthony mentioned, I've come from the other side of the fence, as it were, and from an organisation where things like patching were often bottom of the pile tasks because naturally, they're difficult to accommodate. You can't patch systems during the day, so necessarily you're putting people out and asking them to work, inconvenient hours. You're maybe having to pay overtime and incurring excessive costs, or generating time off in lieu for people that potentially you can't afford to lose. So, I think coupled with the kind of high risk nature of aspects of work like software patching, a lot of customers turn to us and say, look, take that noise away, take that headache away, and actually manage that. And organisations like GCI can say, look, we've got this set of routine tasks that we run through. It's a very prescribed approach to a piece of work like software patching, and we can take that pressure away in a way which actually is underlined contractually, so that every month or every quarter, whatever framework we agree, these tasks are going to get completed in a way which is aligned with your standards. It's not going to get missed. It's prescribed, it's assured, and you're leveraging that kind of best of breed capability and expertise that can live with an MSP. So that, as I say, these kind of carry across a number of disciplines, and we see it in all different areas, and it's growing, almost week on week for us at the minute. But areas like network management, like infrastructure monitoring, like software patching, are really kind of key areas that a lot of organisations want to kind of outsource and get rid of the noise. And the logical extension of that is this transition to actually wholesale managed service. And again, as kind of Anthony alluded to, this is about saying, look, my internal IT function isn't working, and that could be for a number of reasons. It could be that you've got key people leaving the business, It could be an underlying cultural issue where actually there just isn't that drive, that operational capability in-house to deliver IT effectively because of things like digital transformation, kind of taking IT forward and introducing additional pressures. So what fully managed services allow us to do is to work with you to say, look, how can we own your infrastructure from the perspective of the day-to-day? It's not about you giving up that kind of wholesale adoption or responsibility of IT. It's about saying, look, let's work with you. We'll drive the strategy. You help us fill in the gaps as far as ongoing management and day-to-day kind of functionality and operations are concerned. It's often people-driven. So I mentioned the fact that sometimes it's about people leaving and having to plug a gap. That's often a drive of people to have conversations around managed service, but it could equally be that you want to encourage your in-house team by giving them maybe the support, the backing they need, giving them that flexibility to say, look, let's drive you forward. Let's give you some wider exposure to operational models and to people outside of the organisation, so that you can best deliver your skills in-house and look after the bits that matter, I guess, as opposed to having to deal with that kind of run rate day-to-day support. So what does that fully managed model enable? There's obviously a multitude of benefits that come out of the back of adopting managed services, but I think to highlight some key ones, we talked already about things like 24/7 support. That knowledge that you've got a service provider out there that is fully staffed 24 hours a day, proactively dealing with issues and alerts that come out of your infrastructure regardless of the time of day. It's about this idea of business-led partnership. So I mentioned on the previous slide that actually it's not necessarily outsourcing your control, it's about outsourcing the delivery of IT services. It's responsibility that's being outsourced for doing those run rate tasks. It's not the ownership of the infrastructure which remains with you. So a key thing to understand with managed services is that it's not about giving up control or relinquishing your ability to run and manage your IT. It's about getting rid of that noise, getting rid of that kind of day-to-day churn and activity that comes naturally with IT. It's also about outsourcing in a way which is controlled. So we look at things like service delivery managers as a key component of delivering managed services, so that you have a point of contact, and also we have someone internally that's able to drive that continual service improvement, make sure that things like regular outages are investigated properly, and there's root cause analysis done and identification of problems done. And again, they're things that often get overlooked and missed when you're talking about in-house functions that maybe are firefighting more often than being able to be kind of proactive. So, one of those kind of economies of scale things that Anthony mentioned earlier is that ability to lean on additional roles and responsibilities and expertise that sits for service providers that can add value to your organisation that you may not be able to adopt in-house. And I think also, this idea of fixed price delivery is massively important to organisations that we talk to. The thing with managed services is that it's underpinned by contract, it's defined, it's fixed, you know what you're getting for your money, and it takes away that uncertainty of knowing what your IT costs. I think it's fair to say that some organisations, not all, don't necessarily have that handle on what IT costs and what the real world of delivering IT is. But it also gives you that confidence that your IT is going to cost you a set amount, and you've got a fixed, defined set of deliverables that are underpinned contractually that are going to hopefully add value to your IT organisation. A sad conversation that we have quite regularly is this idea that customers have outsourced and it's not working. And it's one of those kind of sad truths that customers often on board with an MSP go through this whole notion of outsourcing, either tactical functions or wholesale outsourcing of infrastructure, and often get to the end of that initial term and say, look, it's not working for us. Sometimes that's about just partnering with the wrong organisation and the delivery of poor service being the end result. But more often than not, it's about this kind of misaligned set of expectations that crops up because either there wasn't that right understanding there, or the right expectations weren't set up front. So I think one of the or a number of the points that we tend to make are that managed services are all about that relationship with your service provider. what's really important is that you find a service provider that's able to be transparent and honest and realistic with you about what it is that they can provide, and equally that from your point of view, you understand what the limitations of that service provider are going to be. And I think to use another example from my previous employment, clearly there are internal systems that we developed massive IP around that ran the business day to day that we were never going to be able to realistically outsource without investing hugely in a service provider's training and handover with that service provider. For us, the value in a managed service would have been taking the noise from around that kind of line of business application away and allowing the in-house environment to focus on the delivery of that application and understanding what those constraints are and those things are that maybe you need to retain ownership of or that aren't well suited to an MSP is hugely important up front. So I think the underlying point here is you need to be realistic about what it is that you're engaging with when you go to an MSP. You need to find people that you can work with, that you can build up a rapport and a relationship with. And that's why so often we see people go on this journey from that kind of safety net, flexible support model that I touched on the first slide in this section through to this idea of a fully managed service, because over time you will learn to understand your MSP, you'll learn to understand their capabilities. And as that relationship kind of grows and is fostered, that MSP is then able to be in a position where they can serve your business in a way which adds value, not come along and sell you the dream and then let you down within a fairly short period of time. So from our point of view, we take massive importance in working with customers to set expectations, to understand what they want in and out of a managed service, and in being realistic up front to say, this is the real world of delivering your IT, and actually the benefits that come out of managed services are often more about deliverables and adding value than they are necessarily about cost. So I'm going to pass back to Anthony to just talk you through some of the specifics around the service offerings we provide and how they overlay with some of the areas I've just talked through.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Thanks.
So just to align with Kelvin's sort of piece on the marketplace and how we address some of that, and just to give a very, very high level overview of the productization, if you like, of what we deliver for customers to fix those three scenarios. So firstly, flexible support premium. As Kelvin said, kind of the safety net service, the scenario whereby predominantly the expectation is that you are running your IT service in-house, but we are a 500-man extension to that team, and we are on the end of the phone to pick up absolutely anything and everything on your terms. Works really, really well in that scenario. Isn't designed for obviously huge consumption on an ongoing basis, but is a great place to start and provide that safety net for you, particularly for customers that want to have that holiday sickness cover, want to have that out of hours cover, but also want that continuity that if they have an individual that looks after a particular technology stack, for example, and that person isn't available, that somebody can step in. Then we're into fixed price. At a very high level is all about the functional or tactical outsourcing. Sorry, Kelvin, I was just giving an overview. That's okay. So fixed price at a very, very high level is about a functional or a specific tactical aspect of the IT infrastructure and looking after it for a fixed price. And fully managed is the piece about taking the entire service delivery in terms of the infrastructure. Now, there are a few things that we do for all of our customers, whatever level of service that you're on, out the box. So 24/7 service desk and 24/7 monitoring is provided to all customers, even on the entry-level service, which is the flexible support. We also offer a 24/7 security monitoring service as well for all customers. So that is us deploying the Alien Vault security platform for our customers and bringing those alerts into our ticketing system and responding to them on your behalf. We have detailed monthly reporting for all customers. So flexible end, it's a sort of an automated piece, whereas on the fully managed service, it's a sort of a service delivery manager interpreting that data for you. And we have a very big investment in ServiceNow, which some will be familiar with as sort of Gartner leading, market leading service desk platform IT toolset. And we provide that, we use that tool to run our entire business, but also we stretch it into our customers by providing what's known as a domain separated version, which allows you to have up to 5 operators within ServiceNow as part of your standard service. And if you also require additional users, you can add a lot more to that. So one of the references we have is Center Parks, for example, whereby we do exactly that. So we provide part of their service, but the internal resolvers are also on that same ServiceNow system. And really talking about the partnership, it just puts a systematic process around that partnership rather than lots of emails and phone calls. Because if you're working very closely with a partner, having one tool set makes that much, much more efficient. So just to recap then on Flexible Support Premium, is about effectively a membership fee plus some prepaid hours, which you can either buy up front or have a frequency, a regular bill, a monthly amount that you put into a pot and you use that as you see fit. As mentioned, you get the monitoring suite with that for network and servers and also for security, and you get the ServiceNow platform for your internal use. And most of the time we see this used for adding capacity and capability to an internal team, whether that's out of hours, whether that's for particular subject matter experts on a particular problem, or simply for some customers, they may have a busy week where their queue is building up, and the customer will flush part of that queue into us to help us really get some momentum and clear down any support backlog that a customer may have. So fixed price support. So this is about taking either a specific function, such as the third or first line support, or taking a specific technology discipline. So network was mentioned earlier. Citrix is another good example that we do for many customers, whereby actually they're very technical products, but maybe, again, you don't have enough work internally, or it doesn't suit you to do that work internally, and you can take out a service which is a fixed price, but includes the ownership of that particular technology or aspect. And again, this is often a journey from flexible support up to fixed price, because for example, you may find that you take flexible support with us and you do use us very heavily for helping on your network support, because let's say your network technician was to leave the business. That's a really good opportunity to say, well, actually, you're using that flexible support quite a lot. You could get a bigger and better service, and we could take ownership of that network under a fixed price arrangement. So we're completely flexible as we go through that journey with customers, and depending on their desires, we can either say, okay, we'll support you more heavily under flexible support whilst you re-recruit in that scenario, or we can look at actually providing that managed service and saving the business that recruitment head. And then on to fully managed service. So as Kelvin was saying, this is about taking the management and maintenance of your IT service business as usual, and effectively that is about the first line call from the user right through to the infrastructure fixes, infrastructure maintenance, aspects such as patching, updating, etc., literally taking all of the keep the lights on aspects of IT and outsourcing it to Blue Chip under a fully managed service, where we do that for anything from we have business. I think our smallest customer of fully managed services is 8 users. Our biggest one is 10,000 users. So it does fit at various sizes, and includes all the different aspects that you need in an IT service delivery model, which starts with the service desk and then works its way through the different teams in terms of different resolver groups and different experts that will do particular pieces of work, all wrapped up with a service delivery manager that manages those teams and reports and come and meets you regularly and runs through the stats and really drives that continuous improvement program with you. As I mentioned earlier in my slides, the success of our business and the success of our service is all about delivering an efficient service, reducing the problems, spotting the repeat issues, and really managing the service, because it's best for us and best for you as the customer if we are reducing those tickets and reducing the amount of work and the amount of pain in the environment. So everyone has the same motive, which is always a good ingredient for success. And in this fully managed service scenario, we take ownership of running your infrastructure. So you really can shut your eyes to infrastructure and focus on those business delivery aspects, whether it's line of business applications, new web applications, or the things that you're using your IT infrastructure for and what they do for the business, rather than making sure that IT infrastructure is working and worrying about the hundreds of calls you're going to get that week from your end users. And just on the last slide here, just to give it a little example of some of the components, and there's a whole load of content that we can share or discuss or present to any of you of how we cut up the fully managed service into different service elements, and then we package those service elements into bronze, silver, and gold, really to recognize that different businesses have different needs, different appetite for risk versus cost, because it often comes down to the risk or uptime versus cost aspect, because what you'll see in our gold package is we do lots and lots more proactive management and maintenance tasks, which all take time and therefore cost money, but they will reduce downtime and they will improve security. So different businesses with different sensitivity, different budgets, so we make sure that we have a very clear choice. And going back to that piece about where people leave their MSP or people end up disenfranchised, it's often because there hasn't been enough detail discussed or exposed right up front to say, okay, what level of service do you need, Mr. Customer, and in reality, what does that cost? Often people are too vague around the detail, and maybe a supplier thinks he's sold a bronze service and the customer thinks he's bought a gold one. The classic kind of scenario we see out there. So very, very important that whoever you work with, that there's absolute clarity in the service catalogue of what services you're getting, what are the different levels that you can have, what do those things include, and that you've got the choice there of the right level of service that meets your expectations. Because in our experience, as Kelvin said, all too often, if an MSP is deemed to fail, it's often to do with this lack of clarity and expectations gap. Like I say, someone's bought a bronze and thinks they've got a gold, and so on. So because certainly you would have expectations of what you would see in a managed service. For us in the bronze, we put all the essential aspects that we don't believe you can call an IT support service a managed service unless, for example, you do server patching and you check your backups and you manage and maintain your antivirus, which is our operational essentials package. So we make sure that with the things that are absolutely must be in a managed service are in bronze, and then silver and gold add more functionality for customers that see value in those things and have appetite for those things. And that's us done, Dan.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Kelvin and Anthony. We've had a few questions submitted by registrants before the webinar, so we'll start with those first to give everyone a chance to finish typing theirs in the chat box. First question is, how straightforward is it to transition between different types of service offerings or to incorporate additional services into a tactical managed service?
Okay, so certainly many customers will start on the flexible support framework. That's very, very easy. So it's quite common for us to have customers who start with that, and even mid-term. So if a customer has that for 6 months and then they decide that there's a particular component they want to bring into a fixed price service, then we can carve that element out. If a customer wants to transition fully, so let's say they've got flexible support and they want to go to a fully managed service, once the fully managed service is agreed, we effectively would, if you like, tear up the old contract, start a new one, and our service delivery manager would take that customer through a new service initiation, which effectively would transition them from the service that they have previously to the new one.
Brilliant. Okay, second question. I'm concerned that moving to a managed service could result in a faceless service. How can you reassure me that a personal service can be retained?
So I think that's always a bit of a challenge, isn't it? And let's face it, everyone likes walking into IT and tapping someone on the shoulder that they know and have worked with for 5 years. And I think that does provide a lot of comfort. Something we've done over the years to really create that relationship build piece is that we break our service desk team into what we call pods. So these teams are between 5 and 7 people, and what they consist of is a technical team lead, a service delivery manager, and then a mix of engineers. And on a business as usual basis, the customer's engagement with the service desk will be with that subset of people on the vast majority of cases. So the reason we did that was really to create that small company feel. There's a small set of people I deal with. I've got relationships with them. It's great for us from an efficiency point of view because we get to know that customer's environment, and those technicians can fix problems much more efficiently because it comes naturally to them. You can imagine that calling up and speaking to one of 120 people on our service desk wouldn't give a very good customer experience. So we really focus on that. But knowing that from a customer point of view, if for example that pod is dealing with a customer and they had a very serious network problem that needed a Cisco CCA engineer to deal with, they can escalate that problem to that engineer in the back end, and that specific engineer can then resolve that problem. So that's the way we really work hard on building relationships between the pod and the customer. Particularly the technical team lead and the SDM is the person that interfaces very heavily with the customer. So the SDM on a managed service generally goes to site once a month, for example, for a site meeting. Funnily enough, we've got a meeting next week with a customer where they're bringing a load of their team in to meet the pod. So, we work hard on that. We do work hard on that. It is a hard thing to do, though. It is a challenge.
Brilliant. And final question, from a security perspective, how can you mitigate concerns I have around multiple people having remote access to our infrastructure?
Yes, it's a common question, actually. Outsourcing IT, and all of a sudden my systems are unlocked to every man and his dog. I guess the short answer to that is it's about having the right systems in place. So one of the things we insist on is that remote access follows a standard process, uses a standard tool set that audits all access, uses two-factor. So in the event that something happens, the worst thing happens, we can trace that particular bit of access back to a specific individual. But the natural and short answer is that every bit of access is audited, and it's very tightly controlled so that we're not opening up your systems to people that shouldn't have access.
Brilliant.
I think also consolidating the effort into the pod reduces the exposure. So obviously, as I mentioned, we do have to escalate into the wider team, but day to day, the people that will be accessing that customer system will be a tighter team that are trusted and understood with that customer. So that often helps put a customer at ease, because I can understand that faceless people maybe being on their systems day in day out could be a problem. So,
and I think one other thing on that, a bit of an aside really, but obviously some customers have very specific security frameworks that they need us to work within, and as a general rule, we'll accommodate those. So we have one customer in particular that requires that we contact them before we access their systems, and actually as a result our accounts are locked down, so we can't access without them giving us some sort of sanctioned access. So there's a potential potential stumbling block there in terms of an issue in the middle of the night, but that's a risk that is understood and as I say, falls within their framework, so we can accommodate those.
Brilliant. Good answers, guys. Thank you very much. If there aren't any more questions, we'll say thank you to Anthony and Kelvin, and thank you to everyone who attended our webinar. We do hope you have a great day and look forward to seeing you at one of our future webinars or events very soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.